these 2-week times, you know. And I said to him, people keep leaving you, don't they? And he said, yeah. And we happened to have that soccer net, and no, we weren't going to take it with us. So I asked him, I said, is this something that you and your brother could use while you're here? And he got very excited, and he said yes. And he just got really excited as he took it back. And there's a table in the room that had snacks all the time. They had snacks for anybody to come up and get snacks. And he went back there and got a thing of Oreo cookies, a little package of Oreo cookies, and he brought them up and gave them to me. And it was I think it was his way of saying, thank you for that gift. So when someone said, what was one of the most meaningful things that you did? It was like being with him, and I was trying to figure out how I could just take him home for a couple months until his parents got their act together, but can't do that. So there is the issue that you have to be aware of just getting attached, them to you and you to them. So that was one of my experiences. Did you want to say more about that?
I think so. I had some interesting interactions with him because he wanted to go to school, and I'm kind of a teacher. I tried to provide things for him during the week also. The tangrams, for instance, that you could make and put into different shapes, and read a story, after which he went back to the quiet place. And so after a while, I went back and I brought a piece of paper, because he had colored, he had himself gone to drawing a picture before. And I said, would you like to draw a picture? And he said, yes. And he drew one of a house and a river, and the river. I said, is there anything in the river? And he said, oh yeah, all these logs and stuff. So he put all that in. So he had some attention all week that I think I appreciated being able to interact with him that way. Joel?
The reason he had been out of school for 2 years, you mentioned, was they were moving around. I think it's very interesting as what was the trigger for their first trouble 2 years ago.
And we did not ask that question, so we don't know.
I think you told me it was
Actually, there was a hurricane before this one
Right,
that came
that's what it
through.
was.
But I don't know, that was that long ago, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, there was a hurricane displaced 2 years ago, and they hadn't found any place
Right,
stable for the
Right.
next 2 years.
right. Yes, they were homeless. He said the hurricane there was, I don't know the name of it, that had come prior to this a couple of years ago. They were displaced from that, and the father hadn't found work, and they were just at loose ends for a place to stay and what to do. That's all we know about the family, actually. Do you want to review these questions and see if
The very best part for you?
The very best part for me was the interaction with the children. How about you? Same.
Where was the hurricane?
The name of the hurricane was Mitchell. Yeah, it came
Okay.
after the big one. I forget the name of the one up in South Carolina. Yeah.
We talked about our training, accommodations for sleeping. You showed that. How we were fed.
You know how we're fed now. That actually the food was good at the base camp.
And it wasn't just women. We had Tom,
Yeah.
and there are other men
Yeah.
that come. Yeah. And these were, you asked, do we have certain clothes? And these were
our clothes.
These were our clothes.
Yep.
Did you get them washed in between?
There were 2 laundry trailers. And so if you could find an empty washing machine and dryer, and we interacted with other people that weren't there for CDS while we were doing laundry too and things like that. So it was a good experience.
A growing organization.
Oh, yes. If you have something you want to say, I would say people are being trained all the time to be deployed. And one of my frustrations, I expressed to Carol, you all know Kathy Freimiller. She was directing this, and now Carolyn Neer is directing. I said to Carolyn, there are so many trainings for people, and I was trained years ago, was never called to go anywhere. And so I actually went to another training to refresh and say, I'm ready to go. Because now I was retired and I could make my time available, more available. The frustration, and I was talking with Linda, Tim's wife, Donna. She is trained also, and when they lived out in Maryland, used to go quite a bit. A lot of the problem for what I was told by Carolyn is this. When we have the need for a team, we put out and find out who's available, who can respond to that, because the response is usually pretty quick. And so we are limited to the number of people who are available at that time. And we need to get a project manager, they call the team leader, set up first, and then do that. And our deployment, our timing for flying was so tenuous that what happened to you, Kay, for flying out to Florida? Okay,
What happened
she
to
didn't.
me?
You didn't even know the night before that you were flying the next day. She was waiting for a flight. So all of this has to happen so quickly. The Red Cross really does have a lot of things well organized, and they managed our transportation. They also were the ones who messed up at the shelter to put all those animals in our room because the left hand wasn't telling the right hand what was going on. And the shelter, we wondered, how could this happen? So this is why, what we put together as to what happened. The shelter director was a brand new director. The other one had been there for a while. Probably didn't have everything in mind as to what needed to happen. So we were lost.
One thing that we were warned about is that you have to be flexible. You have to be able to go with the flow. And that was certainly true in ours. Like the situation she was talking about, I didn't remember what you were talking about, but it was the night before, and it was 9 o'clock, and I still hadn't been told whether or not I had a flight the next morning. We had to get up at, early in the morning. So I just planned on going, and then they finally did text me and say, okay, you got a flight. So that was good. The next is group dynamics. And I want to say that our lead people set aside a time every day before we got to our site to do some devotions. And we sort of pass that around every morning as a way to just kind of ground us and be together. But you're with these two other people and Bev, we were all together constantly for 2 weeks. So, and it basically worked out pretty well.
We admit that at night we had each other to talk through some frustrations with our team leaders, but that helped.
Children reaction, how we help them manage you mentioned that, how we help them.
So we're hoping that all of our questions have been answered. If you have any, and that if you have anything else, we really appreciate you listening to our experience. Yes.
So some of the kids were only there for maybe one day, and some were there the whole time.
Oh,
That's good. Anyway,
okay, I'll try.
some of the kids were just there for maybe one day, and then other kids were there the whole time, the whole 2 weeks. Huh?
I'm trying to think if there was anybody there just one day, but there was a one mother who came in for about a week, and her son was also autistic, but it was good to have her there. And she and another mom came and spent some time with each other while we were taking care of the children. And I want to say that we had 4 autistic kids at various places on the spectrum. And the one that she was talking about that she spent some time with was not verbal. He made noises, but he wasn't verbal. And a couple of them just needed one-on-one attention a lot. So when you just have 4 of us and you have, I don't know, 7 children or 8 children or whatever, it was a challenge, but I think we did a pretty good job with it.
I understand that, yeah, and as you said, each situation is different. That in some child disaster ministries, the children are only there for part of a day and you never see them again. And that the parents come through to get their help and they move on. And so you're constantly changing the people that you work with.
Yep, that's,
Nan has a question back there.
I wondered if you were going to mention that Creekside in Church of the Brethren has a Children's Disaster Services training going on March 28th and 29th.
Oh.
That's in Elkhart.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Probably some of us
Good go.
might be a little too old to do that, but we might know people who could.
we're too old to do that and we're still doing it.
I know.
Actually, Bev and I both were asked to train to be leads. And so we're going to San Diego next week to train to be leads, which is pretty scary to me. It was nicer to have someone else be in charge, and I'll just do what they say, so.
Thank you so much for your interest and your good questions. And as Nan said, you'll probably know some folks who might be interested in being trained. Because there just needs to be a big pool from which to draw to get the availability.
What?